Hello, welcome to Make Some Plans podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Angelo.
And I'm our other host, Kelly.
And today we're here with Lexi Viernes, who is a dancer, an artist, and a teacher.
Welcome, Lexi, to our podcast.
Hello,
so excited
welcome.
to have you again because of the whole thing. But yes, we are here again. And if you would just introduce yourself, your educational background, and kind of what your days look like.
Of course. Yeah. My name is Lexi Viernes. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. My educational background, I went to UC Irvine with a major in dance and a minor in literary journalism. And then I pursued a performing arts career afterwards. With the pandemic, it kind of went shifted direction. So now I'm a middle school dance teacher in the Bay Area. And my days are currently looking like summer vacation. I am, spending the days just relaxing, watching all the wonderful, TV shows, trash TV and all, and then going out and enjoying the beach. What else is there in LA? Just, having a good time in Southern California as much as I can with the Delta variant kind of, tainting things, but it's okay. We're safely doing it.
That's great. Bring us back to when you first started dance and what that was like.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So wait, I just talked to my mom I was telling her about how I was interviewing with you guys. And I was like, Mom, remind me how I started again, because I think I started with wanting to ice skate. That was how I remember it. Is I've always wanted to be I wanted to do ice skating, but it was way too far from where I'm from, so my mom put me in dancing. I talked to my mom recently, and I don't remember if I mentioned this in the last interview, but here it is. She said my grandma on my mom's side used to do swing dancing and Lindy Hop, and I don't know if they were professional or anything at that, but they danced a lot. And so apparently I was in the kitchen and I was on my tippy toes, walking around, and my grandma was like, oh, she's gonna be a dancer. And my mom was like, you're right. And, I think from then on, my grandma tipped off to my mom that I should be put in dance classes. And that's kind of the reason why I got put in dance classes. So from my mom, that's actually how I started dancing. I remember it so differently, which is so funny. I think I was too young to grasp the grandmas said put Lexi in dance classes. So yeah, that's how I kind of got started in dance. And I just started really basic. Really, it was a small dance studio in Half Moon Bay. We did ballet, tap, and jazz, and I did a little mermaid dance for my first dance ever. And then I think as the years went on, my mom was like, okay, I think she really likes it, let's put her in more. And then I started really competitive dancing after I think 11 was when I remember being very okay, I do want to do this, and putting in extra hours.
What was it like to take dance seriously so young?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting taking on something so young and being so focused on some a passion, or I guess a hobby it was back in the day, because I think that's where all my energy went towards. I wasn't the greatest in school, I'll be real. Middle school I was very still trying to be the teacher's pet and being okay, I did all the extra credit, I did all these things. But then I noticed that as I started taking on more hours, especially through high school, I would say I didn't really care too much about school, because I remember thinking well, I'm gonna dance, I don't need chemistry. So I remember my grades weren't I wasn't a straight A student in high school, I would say. But I think balancing was pretty hard. I think socially it affected me growing up, because I think most kids my age would be oh, let's hang out and we'll study together and we'll do these together. And for me it was always, I'm gonna study either after dance, which dance would end at 8 p.m 8:30, and I would be studying by myself. And if something I didn't understand, it would be really hard, because I would have to ask either my older brother, which sometimes he wasn't always available. My parents weren't available because they were working. So like it was a really hard, I think, hard to balance. And also like socially, like my friends I was very close with my friends at dance because I think we shared so much with each other. I got along with mostly everyone at school, but I wouldn't say I was distinctly like a part of a group. I floated around a lot depending on the day. So yeah, really interesting how focusing on dance at such a young age affected my life. It obviously affected it also like in a positive way too. Like, I mean, I think I was able to, be a little bit more independent and like, no, okay, I have to get this done and try and time manage a little bit better. And also just be like open to talking to different people. Cause at school I was like, I mean, I don't have a group to go to. So I'll be like, oh, like, let's see what they're doing today. Or let's go over here. So yeah, that was dance in middle and high school for me.
What is like your biggest tip on time management?
Hmm. Oh man. See, time management is something I'm still like working on today. And I think even then, so when I was in high school, that was like the big rise of like the internet. Like MySpace was a major thing. And of course, like me being the teenager I was like, oh, I need to be on MySpace. Like that was also like a way of like socially connecting. And so I would say my time management skills, honestly, I always allowed myself sometimes a little too much time to like, let's like see what's on the internet. Let's see this. And I think though, even though I put a lot of time towards like a leisure, I always made sure to get something done. I was also a night owl, and I knew that when my brain shifts into like it's time to get it done mode, I like there's no stopping me. And that usually happens like very late at night. So I think it was just a matter of being able to set a boundary on like you cannot be on MySpace for longer than like so and then you have to get this done. And a lot of the boundaries too that I had to set were I think my parents, like again, like I didn't really have them, like they were always like working or something, so they weren't at home. So a lot of the boundaries were set like by myself or like by like my older sister if she was home or something. So like I think I had to have a little bit of assistance in that in terms of being able to manage my time and just getting kicked off of the computer, to be honest. um so that was a bit of my time management back then. It was a lot just knowing that my creative and like my get it done mode happens late in the hours and being able to just get it done. And
You mentioned that dance became a serious thing for you later on. What is the change that happens between having dance as just like an activity to when it becomes something very serious that you want to pursue?
I think the change is, it's starting to realize that you do want to spend all these hours in the dance studio. Because I feel like, I was at the dance studio every day from Monday to like Saturday, 3:30 to like 8. Even on Saturdays, it would be like a 10 to 5 day, which is like a work shift. And I think it was just, once I started realizing I like dance a lot, I love dance. What am I talking about? And I wanted to be at the studio and I wanted to push myself and I wanted to consistently like get better. I think that's kind of when the switch happened, was just like, and that's kind of around the time, especially I would say like 8th grade, like that, like 8th grade freshman, you're not just trying dance just to try it anymore. And I think that's kind of when the switch happened for me, was like a lot of other students that were in the dance studio, like they would come in and they would come and they go. And I had a very strict dance teacher too, who was like a little old fashioned and like, have her moments of like, what are you doing? And I was just like, okay, I'll do it. But I think it was just like the wanting to be there and like knowing I can still improve. I think that's when the shift happened for me, was just like, something that I was constantly like making dances like in my mind, and I was seeking out more performance opportunities on my own. Like every middle school talent, every like talent show, every lip sync, every chance that I could get that where you can like make a dance, like I was always there. And I think that's kind of when I was like, oh, I actually really like doing this. Yeah, that's kind of when the switch happened, was when I just noticed that I was putting myself in more performance opportunities rather than just like taking a seat back and being like, okay, I'll do it. Or like, okay, I'll wait. I'll just do it because someone told me to.
Was that one of your biggest influences, you would say, when you were going to college and applying to college?
Yeah. I remember when I applied to UC Irvine, I actually wanted to go to University of Arizona, which is, I looked for a lot of schools that had good dance programs, and U of A has a really, really great dance program. UC Irvine has a really, really great dance program. I think I applied to like CSU Long Beach, just like a lot of California schools still. I don't think I was ready to make the move to New York, which is something that I think I've always dreamed of when I was little. It's like, oh, I'm going to go to New York. But I knew at that time I wasn't ready. But when I was applying for schools, I was definitely like, they have to have a good dance program, because dance is like something that makes me so happy. And I know that if I'm not able to continue it in college, then I would be very grumpy. But yeah, I wanted to go to I remember like wanting to go to U of A. I visited the campus, and beautiful campus, beautiful studio and everything. But like in my heart, I knew, I was like, this is not like the place I want to be. I mean, Irvine is also quite like secluded, and it's very cookie cutter. But to me, how I looked at it was Irvine was close in proximity to LA, which is like a big dance hub. So when I made the decision to go to UC Irvine, I like took that into factor of like, okay, I can, still take class at UC Irvine. And if I wanted to get out and take more commercial, like a different set of dance classes, there's this big LA dance hub. I decided to accept going to UC Irvine.
I actually have a question about how artistic majors work, because it's not the typical, we apply, we take our SATs, and then we just get accepted, because you have to go through, I think, an audition, and then they also have to choose you specifically, right?
Yeah. So with the arts majors, you have to audition as well. So for the dancers, they had like a day of auditioning. I actually sent in a tape to UC Irvine. And so they usually they ask for a series of different techniques to see how versatile you are. UC Irvine is very ballet and modern based. So they asked, please like show these exercises in ballet. So I would have to film. It was basically a self-tape. You had to film yourself doing all these exercises, and then like they'll ask for jumps, they'll ask for all these extensions and everything, and then they'll ask for some jazz. I love jazz dance, and so there is a small but mighty jazz department within the dance department at UC Irvine. So they also asked for that. But that's kind of like the process. Is what I sent in as a self-tape is what you would do if you were there in person and auditioning, except you are up against like all these people. And I think even though I didn't experience the full live audition, I think I did have like an advantage. I think it is an advantage when you send in a self-tape, because they're forced to watch you and solely you. Whereas I think on the day of auditions, you're trying to be seen amidst like however many other hopeful prospective students are auditioning. So yeah, that's basically the audition process. I sent that self-tape in, and then I got notified with a letter. It was very, very exciting. It was like Hogwarts, but like, college.
So walk us through what it was like to be a dance major. What's your schedule like? What's going to classes like? And just the typical life of an art student.
Dance majors, we had a lot of technique classes. Like I said before, UC Irvine's very modern and ballet based. So with a strong, strong ballet base. So a lot of the times, like the highest level in ballet would be you take ballet every single day, and they're like 2-hour classes. But a usual day as a dance major, I'm going to put us in like performance time too. So it would be, you would have at least maybe two techniques. Like I always took either like ballet and jazz, or like modern and ballet or something. And so those would usually be in the morning. It's usually like first class is at 8 a.m. and then it would go on till noon. You'd have a little break. And then us dancers still got to do our GEs. So we would trek across. UC Irvine has like that, what's it called again? Central Park. That's Central Park.
Aldrich Park.
Aldrich Park. Ring Road.
Ring Road. So like, of course, it's Orange County, so it's like 80 degrees and you're trekking, and dancers, we still have class in the afternoon, so we're still wearing like our leotards and everything, but we're putting our normal people clothes on, or like our regular clothes on, trekking across, and then we do our GEs. Usually that will continue into the afternoon. We'll have like a little break, I think, before rehearsals. So if there's like a big show going on, usually rehearsals will take place in the evening from anywhere from like 6 to 10 p.m. So depending on how many pieces you are, that's kind of roughly a day of a dance major during like performance time. They have all their classes in the morning with little bits of breaks in between, and then in the evening it's just strictly rehearsal time.
I always have so much respect for all the artists, because like your mental capacity to do all of the things for your major, but then at the same time you're here for other educational opportunities as well. I think dancers, they take so many units, like 22 units or something. I always find that like so amazing and admirable how they're able to do both. And I know that dance is so hard on your body and on your mental capacity that I just don't know how people do it. Like some people are like, oh, I'm a double major in dance and bio.
Highlights an interesting point about like when you're taking a major like a science major, there's obviously like most of your time of the week is studying. Obviously you have a really busy schedule, you have 20 plus units. I was wondering if there's any sort of studying process that happens outside of the studio. Do you practice in the dorm? Are you actually reading literature or anything about dance? How does that kind of look like?
Yeah, we actually had like a dance history course while we were doing all these techniques. Like we're still learning about the history, which I actually really enjoyed. And that was kind of like the class where everyone can kind of come in and like we'd watch a lot of dance movies and talk about dance. So it was kind of like our break class, I would say, but we're still like receiving a lot of information about dance background. So we were out of the studio for classes like that. Like we had, I think it was, what was it? Something like critical writing or something against dance. I can't even remember, but like there's a lot of courses that required like writing, or there was like music for dancers where every freshman was expected to take or had to take, which was basically just like a very beginning music class. So we were able to sort of learn about not just dance but different elements of dance. Like music is a big part of it. So that was a freshman course. I think we took like anatomy. Oh, anatomy was hard. So it wasn't always in the studio. I think they really made an effort to try and include different elements of what makes dance what it is. So like obviously the history and background is important, music is important, the learning anatomy, so like what muscles you're engaging when you're stretching to the left. It's all things that like at the time I was just like, oh, this is like our break class, but actually it was really good that we had those classes, because a lot of that we took from like here and way past college. So yeah, we weren't always in the dance studio, but that's usually where you would find us. Or that cafe. What's that cafe that was in the arts? Cyber A.
Oh yeah, that is okay. They have like the best drinks in that cafe. I remember
Loved
when
it.
yeah, I remember when I took like I took jazz one, modern one, just for fun, like dance for non-majors. And
Yeah.
sometimes like, when I'm early, I would just go to that cafe and I'm like, wow, they actually have really good beverages there.
It's really good. I remember they
Yeah.
had like those red couches, and it was just like
Mhm.
you would see.
Yeah.
I think there was an Instagram actually made where it was like sleeping in Cyber A, and it had pictures of different just like arts majors who were asleep on those red couches.
What class would you recommend for non-dance majors who want to learn more about dance?
Immediately I was gonna say social dance. It's like, I mean, you're still learning, like you're learning different social dance techniques like waltz and salsa and everything. And the grad students that I had that were teaching, they gave a lot of background on like, the origins of like salsa and waltz coming from, I think, like Vienna. I feel like that was a good class where both dancers and non-dancers were able to take, or I mean, there's non-dance majors were able to take, and also like meet each other. Like, it was really fun, and I think that's like a solid class that I would say like anyone can take, really, where you can still get, it's not as constricting as like, oh, we're in ballet class now, like we're, in a leotard. You're still like in normal, like, form-fitting clothes. And I love the idea of social dance and like the community around it. Like, you're forced to like talk to people, and like arts majors, we're in that like little bubble across the bridge, and I don't think a lot of us ever really leave that bubble. So it's always nice to have like different or not dance majors, different majors come in. And so I really enjoyed social dance a lot. I would definitely recommend that for both dancers and non-dance majors.
So we're gonna ask more about your involvements at UCI. So if you can kind of explain the types of extracurricular activities you're in.
Of course, yeah. I was really involved with the dance department at UC Irvine. I think a little too much. So I was involved with a couple different dance ensembles. There was Etude Ensemble, which is audition only, very prestigious. It was led by the late, oh, rest in peace, Donald McHale, who was considered one of the pioneering dancers of modern dance. Incredible, incredible man, told a lot of great stories through his dancing, and just like paved the way for, people like me, people that are, our BIPOC communities. Like, literally was the beacon of modern dance. And so we got to learn from him, which is amazing. I was super involved with that ensemble that met Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 2 hours, and did a lot of performance opportunities, not just in UC Irvine, but we went up, like, there's always a Santa Barbara trip that we would go and perform at. We would do like a little collab with them. So that was probably one of my like really, I like hold that so near and dear to my heart, because I loved that time. It's very like pre-professional company too, which is really great. I was also part of Jazz Ensemble, which was head by Dr. Ray, who is the bomb, and she's still at UC Irvine. She's a jazz director there. So that was also really fun. That was on Tuesday and Thursdays for me. Also like 2 hours, and we got to do a lot of collaborations with the art department, like with music. So we did a lot of improv jams. I remember putting together an improv jam with some of the musicians at UCI. We even incorporated like some art majors where they'll like paint something, we'll have it out there. So that was another like really awesome ensemble that I was a part of. I'm trying to think of what else. Bare Bones Dance Theater is a nonprofit organization that's at UC Irvine. I love Bare Bones. Everyone, I think that's kind of, they have a big concert at the end of the year, and that's kind of the concert that a lot of the dancers like really look forward to, because so Bare Bones is mainly, it's not led by any professor, it's the students and the students themselves. So it's kind of like the student, like their chance to put in their choreography and their work. And it's just there's something so wholesome about Bare Bones. It's really great. So I was a part of that committee as well. And we were just in charge of like fundraising, and then, putting together our big Bare Bones show at the end of the year, picking different pieces from each of the students. Yeah, loved Bare Bones. And then I actually was also part of a not dancer related club at all. So when I came back, I did take a break from college to do Billy Elliot the musical, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But when I came back, I remember being very like, oh, I need to explore something other than dance. So I got into writing, and I was a part of a online like journal magazine club called Her Campus. So that was also, I was a part of that. And honestly, I loved that, because it was just nice to take a break from being around dancers. I love dancers so much, but it is nice and refreshing to have kind of to break away from that world and do something else that's it's still like invigorating for me, but in a different way. I loved writing. And so I got involved with Her Campus, and we also had our own little like, what did we have? We just, every week would meet and figure out what articles we were writing. I got to like interview different UCI students through it. So I really enjoyed that as well. Those were kind of all the the different clubs and organizations I was a part of.
How do dancers get involved in performance pieces? Is
Mm,
it by other students saying, hey, you want to be a part of my piece, or is it an audition process?
yeah, a little bit of both. If it's through like grad students and faculty, like if they have like 4 shows each year, right? So they have a fall show, the winter show, and then the spring show, and those are usually through. Actually, I would say all of them are through an audition process. So for bare bones, I feel like you still had to audition, but I think at the most part, like everyone kind of knows like who they would want in their piece. They'd be like, oh yeah, like we've been already working with this person, like, so they're going to be in it. But for the most part, it was audition process where I'll like give an example for faculty shows, like they'll usually do, they'll teach us like 3 or 4 8 counts of choreography that they expect to do in the show. And then the dancers will all do it. They'll see, this dancer fits really well for this role, or, this dancer looks really good in this movement. And that's kind of how it's made. There weren't really any cuts made, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to like associate auditions in UC Irvine versus past UC Irvine. I don't think any cuts were made actually at UCI. It was just a way for everyone to see everybody dancing, and then they'll pick from there. And then how it goes, usually casting would be up the day after, and it's very old, like very like what you see in movies. They'll put it up, all the dancers, like it's right in before the studio you go in for one of your classes, so everybody sees it. And so usually you'll look, everyone will take pictures and send it to each other, and then you'll begin rehearsals for that. So yeah, a little bit more formal when it comes to UC Irvine performances. If it's like a thesis, if someone's doing a choreography major and they have to do a thesis performance at the end of the year, usually that's not audition process. That's kind of like, oh, can you be in my thesis, or will you be in my thesis? And so a lot of friends, a lot of different dancers coming in for that. A little bit both.
So you said you were involved in Billy Elliot and you actually left school for a few years or
2
1 year?
years. 2
2 years.
years, yeah.
Yeah. Walk us through how you got involved with Billy Elliot and then what it was like to be on tour.
Yes. So Billy Elliot, you guys you interviewed JP already. JP was also in Billy Elliot. He was in it prior to me. So at the time, I was auditioning for Billy Elliot for one of the ensemble girls. I started early in high school, and then it just like was never, wasn't a right fit, or they had somebody else in mind. And then I remember come, what's it called? Fall is my sophomore year, and they're like, oh, like send a self tape. So I sent them like my solo. I sent them like, I think, a tap combination. I kind of did that and like waited to hear, and then it happened. It really was like, I remember my mom called me and she's like, Lexi, like you're in, you're doing it. I was like, oh my God, okay. So it happened like really, really quickly. And this was also a really like special moment because I got to start the tour with JP as well. So JP he was already on that tour. But it was really, really awesome just to be able to dance with him. From what I remember, it happened all very quickly. It's my sophomore year. So I took 2 years off to do the tour, and it was such a great, like, again, another like pivotal moment in my life. I feel like, to go on tour at like 19, was it 18 or 19? I'm still a baby. Like I look back and I'm just like, wow. I had my first taste of college, still like figuring out things. And then I went on tour, which I did the first, I think, like 4 months with JP, and my mom was also like, on tour as well. So it was an interesting dynamic and like adjustment. But then like once they both left, it was like solely me on my own. And I feel like that was there's a lot of growth, a lot of growth touring like United States and Canada by myself. So yeah, really, really, really great time.
You left college, and when you were on tour, did you still have to do school?
Yeah, I took a full leave of absence. I knew that if I was on tour, I'm not going to want to focus on, like, I would really just want to focus on performing and just making sure that I'm completely like mentally and physically present for all of that. So I took a leave of absence.
How was performing with your brother?
it was so fun and so great. And he was so at such a young age, JP was so professional. Like all of those kids were. It's crazy. But it was really, really special. And there was a moment, I think like on my opening night or one of my first like couple performances, there's a moment where my character will stand right next to Billy, and me and JP just like had this like ritual of acknowledgement. And the first time he did it, I remember being like so nervous, and I saw him and he just did his classic. He does his face with his like jaw wide open, just like and he did that, and it's just like a nice like little acknowledged moment where we're like, okay, we're gonna do this. And it's right before, it's a thing called hat pass, where it's like very takes a lot of focus, and like it's one of those things where it looks like an assembly line and people are passing something, so if one person screws it up, then it's just like not doesn't it messes up. So it's like a big focus moment. But I remember every time I would see JP or whoever was playing Billy, but specifically JP would always do a face at me, which I think, seeing him be so professional on stage in that moment of just like a break was so much fun. And I was like, all right, it's okay. We're still, and I think it's also really special to acknowledge the fact that like we were siblings, and not a lot of siblings get to do shows together. It was so special and such a great experience to have my younger brother with me. So I really, really, really look back at it with like some fond memories, fond heart.
I think we should do our listeners justice. If they don't know what Billy Elliot is,
Yes.
kind of let us know. The lead role obviously was played by JP,
Yes.
right? And then
Yes.
tell us a little bit about your role, and then kind of just a brief overview of the plot or the story of Billy Elliot.
Of course. I'll start with the like brief overview, and then I'll talk about the different characters. But so Billy Elliot is set in a mining town in northern England, set during the 80s. So set during the Prime Minister Maggie Thatcher, who known as the Iron Lady. A lot of like conflict, lot of, there's a lot of political background in it that I think is what also, makes that musical so there's so many dark parts of it too as well. But basically it's about Billy Elliot is a young boy in a mining town where men are expected to go into the field of mining, or, very masculine things like box. So on one of those days when Billy was going to boxing, he stumbles upon a dance class and realizes that he loves to dance. He gets a little curious about it. So it's kind of, this musical is following the storyline of this boy exploring dance in a community that doesn't really accept men doing dance, men dancing. And I just, this musical is also the music written by Elton John, who, if you don't know, has written so many amazing, he's like done Lion King, he's done all the Disney things, but he also has like a long list of like pop music as well. And so I think it's interesting putting those two worlds into one. It's a story of identity and expressing oneself and really being true to yourself. And I love the storyline. It started off in the West End and then came over to New York on Broadway, and then did US tours. So that's kind of the general overview of that. My character is one of the ballet girls. And, it's so funny because obviously, like when you're looking from a stage, you're like, oh, like these are just like an ensemble of ballet girls, and they don't all really have names per se. But when we're in the show, to make it more realistic, we're going to have names, we're going to have characters, we're going to have roles. So my character was Tina Harmer, and she's considered the oldest in the class, kind of the teacher's pet, knows every single exercise. So she kind of gets a little like competitive with Billy. And so we do have a lot of fun interactions where I think it's classic sibling interaction too, especially when JP's on when JP's on stage, because it's like, oh, like who is this younger like boy coming into class and stealing the spotlight, which I feel like me and JP had a little tiny bit of competitiveness growing up. If you know JP, he's still like, he's the most humble, most like wholesome person. So I would say a lot of it came from me growing up. So yeah, that was kind of my characters. Very fun. And all of the ballet girls had different characters. Like there's a character named Tracy Atkinson who just always had a snack or always had a pie like in her tutu. There was Debbie, who's like the daughter of the teacher who doesn't want to be there. So everyone had a role, which is really fun. But yeah, that's kind of the storyline roughly, is finding yourself, expressing yourself. Great musical.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's pretty
Mhm.
cool too. It seems like the perfectly matched roles because, like you said, it was competitive within the story, and then there's a little bit of the sibling rivalry from real life.
Yeah.
So it kind of like lined up pretty well. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was
I
also
loved it.
wondering if like Elton John's music was in the musical, but did he have any role writing anything for the musical or no, like the storyline?
Oh man, I should know this. No, Stephen Daldry, I believe, wrote and directed. So I forgot to also mention Billy Elliot was a movie prior to being a musical. And so Elton John, I think, just wrote the lyrics, just wrote the music for it. And you can tell there's a song called Electricity. Like a lot of, I feel like it's very, you can tell when Elton John sings it, you're like, oh yeah, he definitely wrote this. But he didn't really have, he wasn't essentially like writer of the story. He just brought like the music to it.
Gotcha. I was just
Yeah.
wondering because it's interesting. The plot of the story was about a boy who was interested in dance, and it wasn't typical for boys to be into
Mhm.
dance. And I know that Elton John, being a pianist and having a very different sort of style in rock and roll, it wasn't accepted or wasn't normal to have that kind of image in rock and roll in the music industry. So it would kind of have like a parallel there a little bit.
Yeah, and I really think that's why Elton was so drawn to the story of Billy Elliot. I recently saw Elton's Elton. Who am I calling Elton by his first name? First of
First
all, like we're
name,
best friends. But it's interesting that you were talking about the parallels of the storyline with Elton and Billy Elliot, and I think that's the reason why Elton John really wanted to be a part of the comings of the musical, because he related so much to it. I did see his biopic, his movie Rocket Man, and so much of it was, I was just like, this is like very similar to Billy Elliot. Like you can see the similarities.
So we're going to move on to you coming back from Billy Elliot on tour to college. You finished your degree. And did you finish your degree in less than 4 years?
I did. I remember I was supposed to graduate 2014. Like if I didn't take that leave, I should have graduated 2014. I graduated 2015. Put myself through a lot of stress. Unnecessary stress. I did not need to graduate that fast, but I think I also was just like itching to get it done. Graduated 2015. So I wanted to try and graduate 2014, which was, I remember telling my counselor, who was my mentor at the time, I was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna graduate. And they were like, that's gonna be a lot of work. You can do it, but I would suggest, taking the time. And so I did the latter. I decided to take the time. I explored literary journalism, which was so fun. And then yeah, I graduated. I took I would say it was like a transition year from college to like working professionally.
So you went into college 2010, and then you did 1 year, and then you did 2 years of Billy Elliot. And so then that would be like 2013.
Yeah, I came back 2013, and I ended tour with Billy March, I think, of 2013, and I did the crazy and decided to jump into the last quarter
To
of
spring quarter.
which it's so interesting. I like tore. I remember I had a stress fracture on my ankle, so I was waddling in a boot. But I think I was missing. I really, wanted to get back into like university life. I really just craved that sense of normalcy, I guess.
Yeah, because you were in a bubble of touring and being in Billy Elliot 24/7, and then so you basically did your major in like 2.5 years. Your degree, right? Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so crazy.
It's wild. And I wanted to double major in literary journalism, but they were like, you're gonna have to stay another however many. And I was just like, I'm gonna minor. It's okay.
What did you do after post-grad?
So after post-grad, I stayed in Irvine for a little bit. There was a adult dance studio called Jimmy DeFore's that I did a program with. It was just like summer program work study where I'll work a couple hours and I get to take a lot of classes. So I kept in shape basically that summer working with them. And then I actually moved back home with my parents October of that year, spent some time there. And like at the time, I remember being just so like, oh, I can't believe I'm like back home. And, you know, classic, just like, why am I here? But I think it actually motivated me to work really hard and save up a lot of money so I can get out. I had a goal of moving to New York. That didn't actually happen until I would say a couple years down the line. Anytime that there was like a performance opportunity or like an audition I would want to go to, obviously the auditions are mainly in LA. So I did the crazy and I would drive sometimes on the weekends to go to an audition or to do a performance. And I would try to balance it out with my work schedule and everything. I was teaching a lot. I was working as a server in a restaurant. That was kind of my life the year after college, was just a lot of working, saving up money, getting involved with teaching. I love teaching, but there was still like this big motivation of like, I'm going to perform, I'm going to book something. And that motivation drove me to very crazy, crazy limits of, you know, driving at 3 a.m. for an audition that started at 9 a.m.
Wow, driving at 3 a.m., going
Oh my gosh.
to, it's literally, you were hustling, like you were saving money. You were like, I need to get this done. And then eventually you booked a job, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, it's so funny. It was a lot of hustle in like the most extreme ways. Like usually when you're hustling, it's like you're in LA already, but I was making that commute. I would make a trip out of it. So I would stay like a week or so in LA. Yeah, eventually I booked my first, like obviously Billy Elliot is a professional gig and everything, but for me, I think I booked a job with Royal Caribbean as one of the dancers on a ship. And that was really exciting for me. I was really, really proud of myself because, you know, genuinely, this is like my first professional gig out of college. And I felt like I really, really worked hard for it. Not to say I didn't work hard for Billy, but I think the year prior I was doing so much that it was extra special to me to book it. I was already living, I also moved to LA. I forgot to mention that, but I moved to LA and lived in LA for 4 months. It had to happen. The commute was not doing it for me. But yeah, I booked my first gig with Royal Caribbean and that was so exciting and I was so happy. I did 2 contracts with Royal Caribbean. So it's basically roughly a year and a half, give or take. It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, kind of give us some insight into what it's like dancing on a cruise, because that's obviously very different from, you know, performing at campus and then doing the tour. You're kind of on a boat.
Yes, definitely 100% on a boat. I'll just take you through it. So with Royal, there's a couple shows. So we had to learn two shows that are basically roughly 45 minutes, but it's 45 minutes full of dancing. They're held like once a cruise. I was a part of a 3-day cruise, 3 and 4 day cruise, which is really, really tough on the body. My second contract, I was a part of a 12-day cruise. So just think about how different that is performing, you know, one show in 12 days versus one show every 3 and 4 days. There's a lot of factors you have to consider when you're on a ship. You are on a stage that is moving. So we had levels for when, you know, the movement was too much. We would have like a level 1 where it's like a little bit of turbulence, but still doable. And we would take off the heels. A lot of the times we're wearing heels in the show. If it gets too bad, there's a level 2 where heels are off. Any major partnering and lifts and stuff are modified. And if there's any like props that get swung in, those are usually, it's up to the discretion of the stage manager and dance captain if it's too much to have them fly in or not. And then level 3 is like the ultimate, cannot perform. And so that's a canceling of the show, which we try to avoid. In my time, I've only canceled a show once. And that was when we were on the 12-day cruise during hurricane season.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like you're kind of learning multiple routines for one show because you need to know the modifications for it.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
it's not even like learning multiple routines. It's just like understanding the modifications. So like instead of this lift, like where the girl sits on the shoulder, it's like, okay, no, we're just gonna do like an up down because it's too much to have to sit and, you know, stay there. Because if the ship is moving one way and you have someone up, you're going to go that way. So yeah, just learning, being also, I feel like you have to really be tuned in, very present, because if you're like just doing the show how you normally do it, there's room for injuries, and so much can go wrong. So it's always important to be really, really present and focused for those shows, especially on like a turbulent day because of the changes.
You were dance captain the second year, right? And so how did you make those calls where like level 1, level 2, or just cancellation?
Yeah. So what's important, especially like as a dance captain, you have to be in full communication with, especially a lot like the captains of the ship. So they have like the officers and the staff captain, and they kind of say, I forget, like it's been so long, I forget what we call it when it's like a level 1 or level 2, but usually like they'll say, oh, okay, it's going to be roughly like this turbulent today. We'll go on stage, we'll have a tech rehearsal the day of, and usually that's kind of when you can tell, okay, it's like, if we're dancing and we make a jump and I'm on one side of the stage, then I'm like, we should probably not do a show tonight. So it's really just like listening to your gut, but then also really listening to what the captain, like the people who are steering the ship, are saying. Like if they're saying it's going to be really turbulent, then I'm not going to risk dancers getting hurt for a show, right? Like, so I think it was just a lot of really listening to my gut and listening to people who are actually steering the ship, because they know a lot more than I do.
And that's like a lot of responsibility too, because it's not just like your injury or like your body, it's also your peers and the people that you're managing. And how difficult was it to manage, like your ensemble?
Yeah, it's so funny. I had a very amazing cast. My first cast, it's so funny, we were known for being a little bit of a troublesome cast. The second cast that I was a part of, that I was actually dance captain for, I was blessed with amazing people, like genuinely good-hearted people. A lot of them were actually new hires as well, so they're still very new to everything. It was hard, it was interesting. They made it so easy to be able to like organize and manage things, and we did everything together pretty much. I loved all of them so much. What made it hard though was being able to have like an authority kind of, I don't know, like it was hard to maintain that balance of like, we're so close and we're friends and like we're gonna go and do all these things, but at the same time, like, okay, now we got to do this, and we had a lot of young hires. So drinking is still like, the drinking age is still at 21, and we had some 18 and 19-year-olds, and I remember being like very transparent, like, because I'm in this, like, I hate to be that person, but like I just basically said, like, don't put me in a position where I have to say something, because that just sucks for both of us. So that's kind of the only thing that I feel like I struggled with, was just like really keeping that line, like, and just being really transparent. Like, we all got along really, really well, and we were still able to have fun. But I think it was just trying to balance that like friendship, and then also putting on that manager position of like, yo, why did you show up like 10 minutes or like 20 minutes late for tech rehearsal this morning, when I knew like, something's at crew bar or something. So it was just hard. I think it was hard for me to really be assertive and in that kind of position sometimes.
How did you overcome it?
I mean, I think what was important is because I was so close with all of them too. I like I learned how they like receive information. If someone I know would not be like, we would give notes at the beginning of tech, and I'd be like, all right, like, dude, if you were 10 minutes late, like, I'm gonna have to write you up if you do it again. Like, I'm able to call out. But sometimes, like, I know some of my castmates were better taking that information if I pulled them aside and been like, hey, like, you can't do this, or what's going on, like, did something happen, are you okay? So a lot of the times it was just being able to understand and like that. And I didn't always get it right. Like, some days I'd call out someone, and then I'd realize that wasn't the best way to do it. So it was a lot of learning how to like receive, and also, call in versus calling out. Yeah. Oh man, lots of learning. But it was very helpful though that I was close with them, because I was able to understand their personalities a little bit more too. So love it. Good times though. I love I love ships so much. I love ship life.
Sounds like you learned a lot from your experience there as a performer, but also as someone who's managing and having more of a leadership role. Kind of walk us through after the cruise. What was your gig after that?
After ships, I did ships for roughly like 1.5 years. I had no plan. I had no plan. I just remember being like, I was very at the end of my contract with Royal. I think I knew that my ship time was, I was like, I could do another contract, but I also wanted to, you know, move on. It's very easy. Like with ships, it's either like a one and done thing, or there's people who've been on ships for like 10 to 12 years, like a long time. So I knew I didn't want to be on a ship for 10 to 12 years. So I was ready to move on. I decided to move to New York. I was like, it was very, very classic, like didn't have a plan. I just knew I was going to stay with a friend, get a job, take some classes. So I moved to New York in September. I think I ended my contract in, was it June or May? May or June. Traveled, went to Europe and did like the whole interrail traveling. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to move to New York now. So yeah, I moved to New York and literally just dove right in, auditions, classes, got a job as a barista. It was a lot, but I think it was perfect. It was the way to do it.
You moved, was it 2019, right? Right
No,
before the pandemic?
yeah, 2018 is when I moved.
Mhm.
But like kind of, yeah, basically right before the pandemic.
When the pandemic hit and New York was the epicenter, how was that like?
Man, just thinking about it, especially now with like the Delta variant like rising again, I get a little bit of like anxiety thinking about it, because it was so scary. I'm really glad though I was able to live the year and a half that I did in New York as it was, like fully thriving and, you know, getting into everything, or getting into my groove of New York. The minute it happened, I remember being so like jarred from it, because I think I was in denial, which I think a lot of people were. We all thought it was going to be like a 2-week thing. It was almost, and I hate to say it was like kind of fun, but a lot of us dancers and everything, we were like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy, but like let's enjoy. We'll take all the classes like online. How fun is this? And then it just like hit really hard. Like I think everyone had that moment of realization that it was going to be a lot longer than 2 weeks. I broke down. My breakdown was like grocery shopping in Washington Heights, where like, were masks a thing yet? Like people were, is so, there's so much unknown about COVID at the time that like I feel like that being everything being unknown was also just like so scary. And yeah, just being in New York, hearing all these things of like, they might, like, I remember my sister called and she said, you better get to California, they might close down, you know, very, very dramatic, but very serious. And so I remember being so scared, and like it was so interesting. The day of it happened, I was late for an audition, an Aladdin audition. I do remember. I was running late. My friend texted me and she goes, yeah, they canceled it. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, okay, that's fine. I'll go take a class. And she's like, no, 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 like they're everything is like closing. That was the day that they closed Broadway, closed all auditions.
Yeah, because when Broadway closes, like it's
That's when you
over.
know.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's when you know. So it was such a weird, but like, you know, weird experience and so jarring. But
I mean, yeah, everyone went online. People who could work from home and telecommute did that. What kind of changes and adaptations did artists like yourself and performers have to do to kind of carry on their career and keep moving, but having to be online?
yeah, you know, I think it was such a thank God we live in a time where we have things like the internet and phones and social media. Some of the dance studios in New York, I think, made a very, very smart and quick move to put all of their classes online, which I know here out in LA, like that didn't happen right away. And some of those studios are like no longer here, which, you know, I think that was like such a smart move, because almost instantly, you know, they had like, there's a studio called Steps, there's a studio called Broadway Dance Center, and they all had their classes online. So a lot of it was just taking class in the living room. Very hard adjustment. I think I even took class on like the rooftop once because the living room was just too small. So it was a lot of that. And for the first 2 weeks, it was fun. I got to take classes. I lined up my days with different online classes. And then suddenly you'll get like Zoom burnout where you're like, I've been staring at a screen for all day.
I call it Zoom fatigue or
Yeah,
screen
Zoom.
fatigue.
It's so
Mm-hmm.
real. It's
Mm-hmm.
so real. And you don't realize it because I think also as just anyone really after like when something like that hits, pandemic, you want to keep going and you want to keep like scheduling things and keep, your days busy and you just don't like leave in a time for that break. And so I think a lot of us dancers really felt that. And yeah, just like over the year though, I think a lot of dancers have also pivoted, not just from auditioning and everything, because during that time, literally like the last year, there's been a lot of nothing. And so I know a lot of dancers pivoted into teaching. I pivoted into teaching. Some dancers pivoted into like graphic design. The pandemic was an interesting way for dancers to explore other avenues because they're being forced. there's no shows going on, so they're being forced to kind of step back, which is a blessing and a curse.
Tell us a little bit about you and teaching, and how do you think your career will go?
I'm so grateful for teaching. I'm so grateful. And I do love it a lot, which I think it's a lot of work. Teaching is so much work, but I really enjoy it. And the pandemic kind of presented itself in a way where I was able to start teaching online. And it really started off, I remember, with the Black Lives Matter movement, which sounds like, crazy, but I remember wanting to contribute in a way, and I just didn't know. I was too scared to like go out, which I hate to say that. I was too scared to go out and like physically be there. I was on unemployment, so I like didn't have a lot of money to donate, and I was trying to think of like things in ways I can contribute. And I was like, oh my God, like I was like, I'll like host a dance class and like people can come and it'll be like like donation based. So like whoever comes in, would have to donate like however a certain amount. And that is initially what got me back into teaching, was doing that. And I did a couple series there's a Southern California company that my friend has called the Hubbard Collective, where they would hold a series of classes where the donations would go either towards the company or towards NAACP. So that's kind of what got me into teaching again, which is amazing. And then I was like, okay, like I can do this. This is fun. I love teaching. And then I started teaching again at one of my studios in the Bay Area, fully online. And it originally started off as like a summer program. And then come fall, they're like, would you want to do solely online, like a Zoom course? They're like, we don't know how long Zoom will be, so maybe it'll just be till October. I said, yeah. I taught 8 classes, and those extended way past October, all the way into June. So I was able to get off unemployment, which was really nice, and just solely focus on teaching. And then, yeah, that kind of led me to my current job right now. I mentioned at the very, very start of the interview, I'm a middle school dance teacher. I'm a maternity leave sub. So I started in April, and I get to teach dance to 6th through 8th graders, which is a fun age. And so I'll be with them until February. And what's great about that is that it's actually not online anymore. It's all 100% in person. My first day was their first day of being 100% in person. So it's so interesting how it's come back to teaching, and I'm so grateful that it did, because I think I've always wanted to teach, and I've always wanted to I don't know, have this opportunity presented itself in a way that it was like, I mean, might as well. I've always wanted to do this, and I think that's what was great about this last year.
I was wondering, as from the perspective of a teacher now, if there's anything that you notice in kids as they're dancing that like you can tell that they might be really good. It's not to say that obviously dancing it's a hobby and everyone should get involved if they're interested in it, but I was wondering if there's like things you can spot in certain kids that maybe suggest that they're going to be like a
Yeah.
prodigy or something. I was just curious.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because the school that I'm working at, it's not essentially an art school, right? It's dance is considered an elective for them. So I'm working with, all kinds of students, right? It's people who are just taking it just for the elective or people who really do want to be there. And yeah, it's interesting that you say that because not to say like, oh, like this is going to be a prodigy, but you can see the spark in a lot of the kids. And it's like it's like almost the same feeling as like performing of like this like the utter like, oh, it's bliss, right? And I get that whenever I see like, oh my god, this I'll like walk in. I remember one time I walked into the dance studio during lunch because I was like trying to hide from people. Not hide, but I was like, I just need like a moment alone. And then I walked into like one of my students literally practicing the combinations that I taught. And like we didn't have a test or anything, but she like was playing the music and practicing. And it's just like, you know, I think it's the initial curiosity and spark that these kids have, like, oh, I'm gonna spend my lunch practicing this. That I was just like, oh, that's amazing, And whether they do come out to be a prodigy or not, just the fact that they're so invested in it to spend their own personal time doing it, I think was really, really special to me. So yeah, there's like a couple kids where I can see that, they really do want to be there and they really want to learn. They're soaking it up like a sponge. So yeah, I think that's what it's one of the things about teaching, I think, is being able to experience that and like live vicariously through them. Like, it's so good. Also at the end of the day, they're, they can be teenagers.
Yeah. How important do you think art education is for younger kids all the way up to high school?
I mean, obviously I'm biased, but 100% important. It is so important. It's just as important as science and math. And I think the arts gets often overlooked a lot, which I think we're slowly starting to take steps into implementing it more into the education system. But I think it's so important. It's so important to have the arts in schools because, I know growing up, the arts for me was my outlet. Dance for me was my outlet. And that's something that I like prided myself in being good at, and sometimes I feel like it's nice to have the option of all of these different things, right? Science, math, English, arts, so like dance, everything. And I think it just makes you into a more I feel like I've been using the word wholesome, but like it's a full whole-bodied wholesome person, right? You're not just a single avenue of something. And I think what I love about the school that I'm working with is that they place a really big emphasis on both the arts and athletic, like, sports and academics. And I think it's a nice healthy balance to be able to dive into different avenues. And so I think it's so important to have, especially at a young age, and bringing it through all the way through high school, because you never know, like this person that's like failing in geometry could actually be a brilliant musician, but like they don't have that connection to the arts because maybe it's not implemented in school, or maybe they don't have the funds to even try it out outside of school. And so I think it's important. I would love, in a perfect world, I think the arts would be, everything would have a nice balance in school.
I feel like every different activity we do it's conducive to different skill sets and like what you're using your brain power for. Like art is so expressive and so like creative. It's just there's no way you get that much engagement with those skills in like other fields, like maybe science and sports, right? Sports is like very competitive and you also learn teamwork, how to support each other. And then, academics is like critical thinking. And I think you need all of them, to be able to
I feel like
really
you do
train
need
all
that.
those skills.
Yeah.
Right.
I was
Yeah.
just going to say, like, I think it's such a healthy balance of being able, especially at a young age too, when you're still learning, to be able to dive into those, and you learn a lot of different skills in each thing, and it's able to cross translate into other avenues.
And I think you're so right in terms of like exploring those options, becoming more well-rounded and becoming more of like a wholesome person to have all of these different skills, because you never know how it's going to present itself. And and all these creativity, it's so needed to solve problems.
What do you see yourself doing more in the future? Is it performing more, being more of a freelance artist, or do you want to go explore teaching and maybe have that as, something you're going to really pursue into the rest of your life?
I definitely see myself teaching like further down the line. I think that's, especially with this opportunity that I'm currently in, I think it's really presented itself in a way that I was like, this is something I definitely want to do like for a very long time. But I'm not going to completely rule out performing as well. I still think I got some kick left in me. I would love to. I love performing. I love performing. So I don't, or no, I don't. I do see myself performing still in the next couple years. I'll be moving back to New York. So, it'll be an interesting way of coming back into the scene, especially after experiencing so much teaching this last and just, pivoting a little bit. But yeah, I'm not completely ruling out performing. I still love it so much. And if the opportunity presents itself, depending on what it is, I most likely will take it. But it's nice to know that teaching is something that I do enjoy and that I see myself doing. It's something that, I started a little bit post college and I was like, yeah, this could be something, it could be fun. And I think because I've invested so much of that time and focus this last year, it's like solidified, like, yeah, hell yeah. So to answer your question, yes to both. I definitely see myself performing still, and I definitely also see myself teaching further down the line when my body can no longer move that much. I'll be like the grandma at the dance studio being like, let's go, here we go.
What kind of general advice do you have for college grads?
I have two things. Is one, being open to trying new things. It's so, I think, especially coming from like a conservatory based college of, okay, modern, ballet, jazz, I think it's very, very easy to get set in that line of route, and just understanding that the process is, it can go in so many different ways, and just trusting that, wherever it goes, it will lead you to where you are meant to be or where you want to be. And also just like staying true to yourself. It's so easy. I think I also did say this last time, but yeah, stay true to yourself, because the industry says you have to look a certain way, you got to do a certain thing, you got to be this and that, and they want to put a label on it. At the end of the day, it's you that's booking the job, and so you want to present yourself in your most real and authentic self. And like, if you're just trying to be what they want you to be, like, it's not, if you do book it, that's great, and it can be really, you'll feel like so like accomplished and everything, but like, is it rewarding always? Sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not.
Yeah,
So.
I agree. I think it's so important, and I think it just takes life experiences and just trying things like you mentioned. And I think in all industries too, where you think they want something, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's like, it's almost like, I don't know if this is related to imposter syndrome, where you present yourself in a certain way and people expect that of you, but then that's not who you are. So that's when, I guess, imposter syndrome hits, because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, wait, but I'm actually not like that. And that's when you're like, oh, well, maybe I'm not good enough because I'm not exactly like that.
And imposter syndrome will come up a lot. And it's a battleground, but it's learning to work with it. You're not completely dismissing it, because you need to acknowledge. I feel like it's always important to like acknowledge, meet with it head to head on why you're feeling a certain way. But yeah, it's learning to work with it for sure. So that's my advice. Trust in the process and staying. That's like three advices. Trust the process, stay true to yourself while trusting the process. What did I say before? Oh, being open to trying it, because you can't step out of college and be closed-minded. You can't step into this world and be closed-minded.
On top of that, what advice would you give to someone who wants to pursue dance as a career?
I don't want to say like kind of the similar things I've said, but that's kind of, yeah, that's kind of, I mean, that's the thing. It's like going back to, how dance and everything else is all correlated. It's kind of the same thing, if you're wanting to pursue dance, yeah, you just work hard. There's no that's like the one thing is you have to, if you're pursuing dance, you got to know that the journey that you're going on is going to be a lot of hard work. It's going to be a lot of rejection. It's going to be a lot of building yourself back up again. So know that what you're diving into is going to be a hard route. And if you're going into the dance career, I think what's most important is that even though it's a lot of hard work, understand why you're there in the first place. If it's not fun and if it's not doing you a service anymore, then that's when I think it's time to realign your goals. And so I think that's one of the most important things in dance, especially, is understanding why you're there and why you love to do, because you wouldn't be putting in these extra hours, all these audition rejections, like you wouldn't be dealing with that unless you really truly love it. And so I think that would be my advice.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, I love that.
And yeah, it really helps to just recenter yourself and just, I guess, think about, there's a reason why you're spending so much time doing this. It's not because you feel like it, there's like a deeper meaning and purpose. But yeah, I think we're gonna just pivot to some fun questions.
Yes, fun questions. I love talking about this too. Like, it's so important. So,
what would your musical be about?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love telling stories. I love, if I had to make a musical, there was like a couple like ideas brewing in my mind, but this one is just like, I would love a musical about like a Filipino family and like just like the different, I just think I would totally base it off of my family, because I feel like we've all explored like different avenues and we're just so fun, and there's a lot of deep content too. Obviously, like my parents came from the Philippines to here, and so there's a lot of like story background that I think is relatable also to a lot of communities of color in the United States and beyond. And so I feel like it would be really cool just to have such a personal musical in the future.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, I think like it was last time when I mentioned this, I'm like, the title needs to be more than just lumpia. Because like literally every single time, I think like a lot of the Filipino American kids, when, for parties and whatnot, like lumpia is always there. And I think lumpia is like more of not like a universal food that like people know about, but it's like expected, right? Like in every single fiesta or a function or a party, like lumpia is always present. But then there's also more like Filipino food that's just lumpia, there's like sinigang, and there's like, lechon, and there's like pancit, and
we just had like sisig last night. It was so good.
Yeah.
So
like there's just more than just lumpia. Like you don't just eat lumpia. There's like tinola and all of that.
Total like side note, but you're in LA right now, right?
Yeah.
Have you been to Park's Finest?
Wait, no, what's that?
I think it's called Park's Finest, but it's like a Filipino restaurant that's kind of fusion. You remember it, Kelly, right?
I think so.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's called Park's Finest.
We need to go there. We just went, we got takeout from Big Boy on Sawtell in West LA. So good.
Yeah, I recommend checking out Park's Finest.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's called that.
I just wrote it down.
Yeah, check it out. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Total side note, but
yeah.
I love it. I love it. We got so much takeout last night. It was so good. We had pork sisig, longanisa, lumpia, lechon. Literally, basically what we just said.
Yeah, but it's like more than just lumpia. Like there's so much food. And yesterday we were like shopping for making sinigang tomorrow, and like I was like, okay, what do we need? And we wrote down like a grocery list of what we need.
And then like a little powder.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Mamacita's powder.
Yeah. Yeah, sinigang is my favorite 100% dish for sure. Oh, so good.
I was also wondering if anyone in your family does ballroom dancing, because my grandma and grandpa, when they were a bit younger, they used to go to ballroom dancing all the time in Daly City.
Really?
And there was a whole like community of just Filipino retirees who would do ballroom dancing, and they love to watch that TV show on the Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so it
Wait,
was like
that's
a lot like that. They would just dress
oh.
up, show up on Friday night, and yeah, so yeah, definitely dancing, karaoke is pretty deep in Filipino culture.
Yes, 100%. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That's so cute though. I feel like that would be me in like 50 years. Is like
Mhm.
dressing up, going to the
Yeah,
going
and
to ballroom dance.
it's awesome because then there's like, I feel like the women, for some reason, they tend to like do it longer.
Mhm.
And at these parties you'd see like the older Filipino woman dancing with like a 25-year-old salsa teacher or something. And it's like they can hang. It's awesome.
It's so they can. I was like, look at
Yeah.
them. They can keep up. They know.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Another fun question. I'm gonna try asking something different, and this is like a no judgment and no, this is a safe question. If you don't feel comfortable answering it, you don't have to. But I was wondering if there are like stereotypes or characters of dancers in the community,
Oh
and if
man.
you could like talk about that and maybe describe what kind of character you'd be.
So,
Bringing back to
okay.
like Tumblr 2010.
Oh my god, like prima ballerinas, like that, like these kind of characters are you talking about?
Yeah,
Or
just
like
like, is there a try hard? Is there a person who's just so focused on one thing? I'm just
oh, like the
wondering.
person who's always late to dance class.
Yeah, just stuff like that.
I'm the person who's
And
always
then
late to
you
dance.
can characterize yourself just for fun. What kind of
Oh my gosh,
stereotype you'd be?
so I really need to think about this. Okay. So yeah, I would say like there's like the prima, which is like the prima ballerina, which is someone, I mean, essentially like they're like the bun heads, right? Like I feel like that's like a big dance stereotype of someone always in a leotard, you know, first in line at the bar, like ready to go. There's the musical theater. I wouldn't classify myself as like a full musical theater character, which is like, obviously a big musical theater nerd, knows all the musicals, is going to be like harmonizing with the pop song on the radio, like when they sing Firework, you're like, this is very overly enunciated. I feel like it was that. Like, it's so funny that we're talking about this because it's like I'm trying to think of like the different like stare, and then there's like, oh, since I'm in LA, there's like the cool, like, very like the hip hop, super great, like super good at hip hop, like almost too cool for school. Definitely not that. I would say, let me think about this. Oh, in a classroom setting.
There's also
Yeah.
like the Pilates, like, oh, I go to yoga as like a warm up before, going to class. And then I think what else is there? I think there's like, oh, like I only do contemporary and jazz.
Yeah, like oh my god, there's like this guy on Instagram who, yeah, I forget his name. He's like blonde. And he keeps like talking about different lives of dancers. I'm like, wow, yeah, that's a contemporary dancer is like, I don't know, eating a carrot.
No,
right
it's like no, it's like going to like mix and getting a salad. Like
yeah,
something like that.
But that's like a true story though. Okay, quick story time. The first time I took like a contemporary modern dance class in San Francisco. I think it was like some like conservatory there, and I just remember going in feeling very out of place. Like I'm a jazz dancer and like I love musical theater. I love that whole aspect. And then I remember like sitting and it was just a lot of like the stereotypical like there's like the dancer like rolling out like constantly like with a tennis ball or like I don't know like doing some type of stretching, and then there's like another person in the corner that's like we have the 5-minute break and they're like nibbling, literally this girl was nibbling on like a carrot and like kale.
Oh
and, like,
no.
like in like a bowl, but it was like you know, actually I was like, all right. So
Oh wait, you also have the TikTok like dancers too, you know, like they're
yeah, and then
trained.
like
Yeah, they're like trained in all sorts of dance, but then they're like famous on TikTok.
there's so many. I would say I would hate to classify myself as like a musical theater kind of a person, but I feel like that would be me, but like let's like tone it down a little bit. Like if there was like levels of like the musical theater character, I think I'm like near like the lower like beginning level, because I'm not the kind of person to be like overly exert about like musical theater. Like I'm not harmonizing every second, or I'm not like, oh okay, well we're gonna do this today, we're gonna audition. Like I feel like there's a certain character. For all musical theater people that are listening, I'm not ragging on you at all. It's a beautiful, it's a characteristic that you need to have, and sometimes I just don't have it. So
Yeah, that's
I
a
love
funny
it. That's
question.
awesome.
Yeah, no,
That's cool. That's awesome. I mean,
because I
obviously,
think,
you all
yeah,
share the same passion, and it's all good. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
this
it's all
is
good, just
you know,
different levels.
I wanted to know
Absolutely.
just because I want to. It helps me paint a picture of the dance community more, and that it's
yeah,
also very fun, and you know,
It's
you
in a
know,
completely fun way. Like I feel like yes, those are like very exaggerated stereotypes of dancers, because obviously not every dancer is like that, but like they exist out there and it's
mhm.
yeah,
okay.
yeah. It's like that
Okay.
meme where like, oh, tag yourself in like all these pictures of like what you are, like, you know, back in like, I don't know, 2012 on
Oh my god.
Facebook, like
Yes, on like Tumblr.
yeah,
I remember seeing one like which ballet dancer are you? And it was like
yeah,
the one that knows, like is at the top of the bar, like knows everything, or the
yeah,
one that's like following, like comes
me,
in late and following.
me.
That's me. That was me.
That was me. I mean,
1000%.
yeah, I was
I
never
used
on
to
top of it.
I used to like strategically map out where I would stand in class,
I would
and
too.
like I would be like, okay, I was like, I'm gonna stand behind Caitlin today because she usually knows like the first rep.
Yeah.
I don't know it as well.
Yeah. And I also feel like when I was younger, I would always be like, oh, I want to be like in the front of the class. I want to lead. I want to do all this. And then as I got older, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's too much pressure. Like, I don't want my teacher to expect anything of me anymore. Like, I'm just going to be in the
Yeah.
middle. So, like, someone can lead on the other side and the other person can lead on the other side. And I'm just right in the middle.
That's the best place to be too. Middle, like second, because you have peripheral. Oh God, look at me. Like if you're in a class or you're in an audition, best place to be is usually like middle, like in the like straight up in the middle, because you have peripheral of your peers, and you can also see exactly who's in front of you. So you like if you forget something, you're not completely lost. You got many options to figure it out right away.
Yeah. Good times, good times in the studio.
Good times. Learned a lot. Learned a lot.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for answering all those questions with us today. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Any last words or plugs you'd like to make?
Just thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I can't wait to hear the rest of your episodes.
Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us. And thank you to the audience for sitting down and listening. And we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, thank you.